Hey, good morning. So I want to talk a little bit about the Fed and what they're doing with the economy and tightening, increasing interest rates and decreasing uh, their purchases, or they've eliminated their purchases. Now they're running off MBS and treasuries and things like that. So the reality is 20, 30 years ago, uh, essentially they got rid of inflation, but they ushered in a new era of deflation. So for 20, 30 years, they've been trying to stop deflation. And the, some of that has come from pricing through Walmart and things like that have, that have lowered their prices over the years and offshored manufacturing. So all that has kept prices low. But the reality is, if you look at it mathematically, so everything, when they measure in percentages, everything actually goes to infinity. So 1% of 1% of 1% eventually goes to infinity. 1% of $1 is 1 cent. 1% of $1,000,000 is $10,000. So eventually everything goes to infinity when you measure in percentages. So you can't actually have positive growth forever. It doesn't work that way. So you have to have these bouts of negative growth. So they've been trying to eliminate these negative bouts of deflation and shrinkage of the economy for 30 years. Excuse me. And as soon as they actually got real inflation, which by and large was caused by two things. First, COVID reopening. If you look historically, the last time we had a pandemic, there was a lot of inflation as well. And it's just pent up demand. So that's just supply and demand economics. And the other thing is the war in Ukraine. So that's, from my understanding, increased a lot of food prices, which is part of the core CPI um, measure. And they'll strip out oil and food prices and things like that because they say they fluctuate, which is true. But everything is related. It's very rare to have one commodity that's gonna cause 8% inflation. So the reality is all these things work together in sort of a perfect storm and created inflation. Well, that inflation is going to be gone immediately because the Fed has caused over 7% mortgage rates. And if you remember anything about 2008, 2009, my first home loan was 6.375%. Very similar now. You have multiple offers, you couldn't get a home, blah blah blah. That turned probably not even as fast as now. It took about 2 years for it to really turn and us to hit the bottom. Right now, as some economists would say, uh, the Fed has hit the brakes and the economy is going through the windshield. So you are going to see deflation immediately, and it's going to start right around, I would say, at least January, if not the spring. And the reason is when they measure inflation, it's a 12-month percent year over year change. Now, they will also measure, month change. So from September to October, there'll be a number and it'll be up or down. The problem with that is it can be volatile, right? There could be a million things that cause that to go up and down. Now, year over year, that's a little harder to sort of fudge, I guess. It's not as volatile. It's probably not gonna go negative. I mean, prices of used cars and oil will probably come down, but what you're gonna see is this real flattening of the inflation number. And the reason is because if you go to a bar and that bar sells beer for $4, and because of inflation, and inflation is running rampant, and 1 year, so they finally cave and they try to keep it $4. They finally cave and make it $5. So, that $5 is baked into everything they do. It's baked into profits. It's baked into their hiring, their business model, everything. So the reality is, you've drank your last $4 beer. It will never be $4 again. Now, the increase may either stop, and so it's $5 for the next 5 years, or it may go up slower so that it's $5.05 next year, or $5.10. But so that's all the Fed's going to be able to achieve by these ridiculous rate increases. 75 basis points multiple times a year. Never happened, um, except the 70s and Paul Walker, and that was a totally different situation. Um, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But this whole notion of we're going to lower inflation through interest rate increases, um, it's going to be very lopsided. So, you know, we had we had no inflation in 08, 09. Great. No, that's not how it works. You don't. Yeah, I understand you don't want 8% inflation, but the problem is, as I said before, inflation is transitory. The problem is it's measured in year-over-year change. So if in January, let's say you had a really bad inflation month, and from December of last year to January you went up 8%. The reality is, for year over year, you're going to be at 8% the entire year, because prices are not going to go up 8% in January, and then February go down 4%. That's not going to happen, because of the example before with the beer. So I think, coincidentally, we have an election coming up in November, and I suspect that the day after that election, they will pivot, or shortly thereafter, at a minimum, not increasing rates anymore, potentially cutting rates. I believe by first quarter of next year, they will be largely, the calls to cut rates will be too loud to ignore. Um, so we'll see, but yeah, over 7% interest rates in housing, not happening. And again, everything is takes time. They can't, they want to, everything now is on demand. It's instantaneous. The economy is a Titanic. You can't turn the Titanic and avoid the iceberg immediately. It takes time. So all these houses that were built, everything, all the expensive lumber from $1,700 per thousand board foot, and now it's like $450. That $450 wood, that won't be baked into prices until like end of next year. So every house you're buying now, again, go back to the beer example, either the bar goes out of business, i.e. builders, or they sell for $5. That's just how it's going to work. So we're going to see one of two things. We're going to see this sort of flattening of the economy and interest rates, and they're going to realize they actually went too far and have to cut, or there's going to be a lot of bankruptcies. That's just reality. So anyway, good luck out there. Have a great day.